Hi, and welcome to another edition of Hillspring Marriage Matters. The last couple of weeks we've been talking about God's purpose in marriage. We discussed the purpose of companionship, and we also discussed the purpose of the Ezer Kenegdo, or suitable helper. And this is really all underneath the umbrella or the heading of relationship. One of God's primary purposes in marriage is to provide meaningful, deeply committed relationship. God uses marriage as a metaphor for his relationship with the church, and indeed his relationship with us. He created us for relationship.
This week we really see how serious God is about relationship. In Genesis 2:24 we read, "That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh." One flesh. Wow. The Living Bible translation says it this way: "A man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife in such a way that the two become one person." One person. That's more than just friends with benefits. That's more than just an acquaintance. God has a purpose for marriage that includes deep, meaningful, and intimate connection.
Yeah, the Old Testament employs two words for that word flesh. One is bezar, which occurs about 266 times. The other one is seer, which occurs about 17 times. The two terms are identical in meaning. They're basic references to the material substance that makes up earthly creatures. That level of oneness, that level of commitment is paramount in a healthy marriage. But it's not our commitment level that alone creates oneness. God has brought Lori and I together. Jesus doubles down on this in Matthew, where he says, "Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate." That word joined in Hebrew is actually the word for glue, and actually more appropriate, it translates to super glue. Satan spends an inordinate, that's an easy word for me to say, inordinate amount of time trying to separate what God has brought together.
I actually love how the Message translation puts it. Because of this, a man leaves his father and mother, and in marriage he becomes one flesh with a woman, no longer two individuals, but forming a new unity. Because God created this organic union of the two sexes, no one should desecrate his art by cutting them apart. Isn't that the best? I just love that. It's forming a new unity. The Message translation calls that union art. So Kurt, you and I are, in our marriage, we're a work of art. Think about that for a second.
Yeah, I did think about it, and I think it's probably a little bit more abstract art.
Stop it, that's funny.
But you're right, though. The analogy of marriage being God's artwork, especially when we consider oneness, is really powerful. Just think about that for a second. I remember watching Bob Ross paint happy little trees in his landscape. Think about when a painter uses all sorts of colors, sometimes mixing them together to create a single beautiful painting. And that's what happens when God joins, super glues two people together. We each have our own personalities, strengths, characteristics, and gifting. But when God brings us together, he creates a wonderfully mastered single piece of art, namely marriage. It's not just two pieces of art hanging side by side. It's a single piece of art.
That's why it's really important that we understand the importance of oneness and we work to preserve it. Just as you can't cut away a section of a painting and have either the section of the painting or the remainder of the painting keep its original beauty, divorce does the same thing. It ruins God's artwork. I know we're using the Message translation a lot today, but I really appreciate how the Message talks about divorce. In Malachi 2:16 it says, "I hate divorce, says the God of Israel." God of the angel army says, "I hate the violent dismembering of the one flesh of marriage." The violent dismembering of the one flesh of marriage. Talk about a visualization.
Yeah, but that hits it right on the head. I mean, that's exactly what it is. One flesh joined together, one flesh, one person being ripped limb from limb. It's a great translation, and I think sometimes we gloss over like the impact of divorce, but that translation summarizes it really well. But that's what occurs when Satan convinces a couple to divorce. The oneness that God has designed so wonderfully and so beautiful that makes that artwork that God has masterfully painted has tremendous benefits. Harvard University did a study on the long-term impact of long-term marriages on health. Here's what they found. They found that long-term married couples live longer, have fewer strokes, fewer heart attacks, have a lower chance of becoming depressed, and are less likely to have advanced cancer at the time of diagnosis. Furthermore, they're likely to survive cancer for a longer period of time, and finally, would most likely survive a major operation more often.
So what you're telling me is you're going to be around for a while.
I am.
Oh, well, that's good, because I'm hoping for that. A lot of people get concerned that oneness means that we need to think the same, act the same, have the same likes and dislikes. Do I lose myself when I become married? Am I no longer myself, but rather someone or something else? The answer is no. The psalmist says we are uniquely and wonderfully made. You are still who you are. I'm not Kurt. I have a different personality and different gifts. I'm not as carefree and fun-loving as Kurt is. I happen to be a little bit more serious.
Yeah, and I'm not Lori. I have horrendous attention to detail. I tend to be a little bit more of a big picture guy in my thinking. I do tend to find humor in just about everything, or at least I'll make everything funny, or at least I think it's funny. But I'm a planner. Lori is my travel princess. I make all the arrangements. I book the flights, the hotel, car. She just shows up. I tell her, like, okay, we're going someplace warm. Pack for that. Her boarding pass magically appears on her phone. She has no idea how it got there. But I wouldn't want to travel with anyone else. I wouldn't want to experience the things that we've experienced, the new places we've gone, the people that we've met without her by my side. The oneness that we are creates the best outcome for anything and everything that we do.
Even in our marriage ministry, when we do premarital counseling or we work with couples needing a bit of help to help their couples in crisis, the two of us work as one. Together, we're able to bring so much more perspective, guidance, and encouragement to others. I'm sure God can use every married couple in the same way in ministry. God has brought you together to do great things. Don't let the world's wisdom convince you that oneness is something to be afraid of or to be resistant of.
So here's the takeaways, right? First, recognize that God created a divine intersection in your life to bring you together. I know that some of you guys think, that you were pretty suave and debonair, and you wooed and courted and, convinced your wife, your then-to-be wife, to marry you. But that's not what happened. God created that intersection. God created that intersection. Jesus tells us what God has joined together. So first recognize that was a divine intersection to bring you two together. Second, He's superglued you together to create that singularity, that one flesh. That supernatural oneness that takes your individual talents and gifts and makes a beautiful masterpiece out of it. Third, resist the pathetic, desperate whispers of Satan that whispers and speaks to the importance of selfishness and individualism. Just ignore that. And then finally, fourth, embrace your oneness. We do premarital counseling, and one of the things that we do is we ask people to email us single word adjectives that best describe their fiancé. And so we get those from the future husband, we get those from the future wife. And then we take those words and we make a word cloud out of it. We have it professionally embossed on metal as a picture and give this to them. And that word cloud of all those adjectives, how they describe themselves, beautiful, thoughtful, kind, loving, faithful, and the list goes on. Sometimes we'll get up to 20, 25 words from each person, how they view their spouse. But when you combine all that together, this is now who they are by joining together as one. So embrace that oneness.
Thanks for listening. Look for the Companion Marriage Matters Honest Talk devotion for couples in the newsletter. As always, please let us know what you think, what marriage questions you have, or even let us know about other topics you'd like us to cover by emailing us at hillspringmarriagematters@gmail.com. See you next week.